the February 8th, 2021 meeting of the Traffic and Public Safety Commission to order. Let's see, roll call, Amanda.
Yes. Chair Brian Grover.
Here.
Vice Chair Marty Benson.
Here.
Glenn Johnson.
Present.
Mary Lou Schultz.
Here.
Charlie Leisternis.
Present.
And Michael von Neumann.
Here.
All right, so let the record reflect all members of the commission are present. Item 3, the Pledge of Allegiance. Again, I think we'll skip this, but I have noticed that the city council meetings, they've been just putting up an image of the American flag and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll be more tech savvy for next month's meeting and do that. Seems kind of cool and appropriate. So anyway, that'll be for our next meeting. Moving on to item 4, special presentations, proclamations, and announcements.
Yes, Chair. Abe Bandigan, City Traffic. Well, I guess I don't need to say it anymore if it's being recorded. I'm so used to it. Yeah, using my name and title. Yes, as you know, we now have this term limit for our commissioners, and we were told around a month and a half ago that Commissioner Leisternis, this meeting, I believe, would be his last meeting serving the city. I wanted to, as a city traffic engineer who had the honor of working with him for the past 2.5, 3 years, to appreciate his service to the city and thank him. I personally enjoyed a lot working with him, his knowledge, his experience, his memory, his understanding of how the city works. I want to appreciate his service. We created a very, very small certificate. It's nowhere comparable to the service that probably provided to the city, but as you know, being a government agency, we have some constraints in having some proper appreciation. So we couldn't get any gifts or anything. I'll check if we can have another way of appreciating him. But during these Zoom meetings, it's really tough to do anything. Amanda accepted to mail this certificate to Charlie. Charlie, we appreciate your service. Thank you a lot. I learned a lot from you. I appreciate your support these past 3 years. Your understanding of how we work and how we do things and our limitations and what we can do and can't do. Thank you very much. And I don't know, the county is not that big after all. We might end up somehow working together on a different topic. You never know. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and this is Chair Grover. I just wanted to, thank Charlie as well for his service to this Traffic and Public Safety Commission. I think Charlie has been I know Charlie has been on the commission longer than any of us, but he had a pretty long-standing career here, saw a lot of change on the commission, and I always appreciated it. Charlie always had fun with these meetings, even when we went till 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And Charlie, I always have appreciated and will appreciate your, kind of reeling us back in when we kind of go sideways. You've always kept a certain amount of, decorum with this commission, and I'll always appreciate that. So thank you for your service here. Any other commissioners want to?
Yeah.
Yep.
Commissioner von Neumann here. Charlie was I think the first commissioner that I spoke with person to person after joining the commission, and I learned a lot from Charlie. And I think we're going to miss his institutional knowledge. I'm always amazed at what he can remember from a few years back and all. And I think we'll definitely lose that. And I also want to just echo Brian's comments that Charlie could always bring us back to where we needed to go. And I really appreciate that. And I'll miss having his input and learning from him. So thank you, Charlie.
All right. Charlie, you're muted. You must have something to say.
Hang on a second. Am I still muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, just thanks for all those kind words. I want to say what an honor it has been to serve on the commission. And I also want to specially thank Abe and the staff who came online during a time of change. So my audio is a little delayed, and I'm just going to conclude by saying thank you very much.
All right, Charlie. Well, thank you. We'll be curious to know what you're doing with your Monday evenings, the first Monday of every month from here on out. Maybe you could send us some emails.
Charlie,
Go ahead, Glenn.
This is Glenn Johnson. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I'd invite you as a citizen of Encinitas to attend any of the meetings of the commission and comment as a citizen. Your knowledge is appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 4B, presentation on citywide roadway lighting standards.
Yes, Chair, thank you. So we have a HSIP grant that was granted to the city around Highway Safety Improvement Program grant in the amount of 700, I think $30,000. The grant was supposed to be used to retrofit certain corridors of the city, converting the old low pressurized sodium and high pressurized sodium street roadway lighting systems that we had and intersection safety lightings that we had to LEDs. We utilized the design portion of the grant to hire a consultant. And what I noticed that when I started with the city that we did not have a roadway lighting standard in the city. So to choose what kind of a fixture we need to use for the city, especially these days with these LED lightings, that the technology is very advanced and you can choose how the fixture drops the light on the ground, how much backlight, how far the drop is, how thin the drop of the light is. So if you have a bright light, it doesn't drop into the other side of the roadway if there is a residential building or if there is a window. So the way the light drops is different depending on the type of fixture is being used. So it's not just wattage like before. Before it was only one single number, just wattage. These days there are like 10 different specifications associated with the fixture, and the wattages are all the same. You can buy a 50 watt or a 40 watt LED that drops the light totally different. For example, if you're in a parking lot and you want like a circular drop, the lighting is different compared to being in a narrow residential road. So long story short, we thought it's a perfect opportunity to use the design portion of the grant to hire a consultant, come up with a some sort of a standard table for the city that would guide us, the developers who are building, properties in the city, our maintenance team, our public works department, to know what kind of a lighting fixture to use in different areas of town, different roadways of the city. The design work is close to finish line. Obviously, it has to go to council for final approval. But I thought before, and we're also planning on doing some sort of a sampling to create a few small segments, corridors as samples in the city, use the proposal of the consultant in those corridors, and then let our residents provide us input and our council members and our commissioners to look at them and tell us how they feel about these fixtures. We're working on making that sampling situation happen. But before taking these final steps and taking it to council for approval, I thought it would be good for the commission to hear from our consultant, have a small presentation tonight. And when we go to council later on, we can say commissioners have heard about this and have reviewed. And if they had any comments, they provided us. With that, Amanda, can you transfer this? I don't know how you're going to, are you going to present this and are you going to show the slides and how is it going to work?
For John's presentation?
Yeah. So John
Yes,
will
I can.
Or you're sharing it? How is it going to work?
John, would you like me to share it?
I mean, I can share it. That way I can keep the pace. That's fine.
Okay.
The,
So I didn't know if John could share. Okay, if John can share, then it's even better. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
okay. Let me know if you guys can see the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so thank you, Abe, for providing me this opportunity to come and present to the Traffic Safety and Commission. As Abe said, he actually summarized the project pretty well in his overview. Just a brief summary. I mean, as Abe mentioned, the project's going to remove the existing high pressure sodium lights, install lower cost light emitting diode lights for the safety lighting at signalized and unsignalized intersections, roundabouts, and several of the corridors within the city of Encinitas. Our scope was preparing photometric models for the different configurations of intersections, developing a LED lighting standard for the city, as Abe mentioned, and then we're doing a small PS&E package, plan specification and estimate package for all the lighting retrofits. Those corridors are identified here. As Abe mentioned, this was a grant-funded project. It was Caltrans Cycle 8 Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP funded. The countermeasures that we were able to apply for was to add segment lighting and improve the signal lighting overall. The total expected benefit from the grant was just over $6.4 million, which is a little over 13 miles of roadway in the city. It's also going to assist in crash reduction and 30% reduction in lighting costs. And that's where we save a lot of our money as the city is the lighting costs. Total project cost is $718,000 with a benefit cost ratio of just under 9. As Abe mentioned, we developed some lighting guidelines. These are just kind of some general overviews for the different types of lights. Basically, all the light fixtures that we're recommending within the city are going to be ANSI C 136.41 compliant. That is the NEMA pin receptacle for photometric controls to have future smart lighting applications. So we're already thinking ahead of, do we want to have these lights available for Wi-Fi connectivity so we can turn them off and on and dim them remotely if need be. And then this just shows the different types of lumen requirements that we would have for the different type of roadway. We identified prime, arterial, local, and then pedestrian scale as part of our guidelines. And this just goes through the continuous lighting standard. This is where we looked at pedestrian activity, whether it was low, medium, or high, and then based it off of the street classification and how we would actually do the light spacing for the pedestrian area in that area. So here's kind of an example of us. We would take the plot files from the manufacturers and run different models with different widths of roadway or different widths of spacing to come up with the foot candles would be for the certain areas of the roadway. So for the pedestrians, we'd be focused more on the sidewalks areas and stuff like that. And as you got farther away from the sidewalk, the foot candles would lower, similar to what Abe had mentioned previously. And then the next thing, as Abe mentioned, is we're going to do retrofit lighting. So we've gone through the city's GIS database and use that to kind of generate a plan set that Caltrans could then look at and say, yes, the project did have a plan set package that we can then advertise plans and specification and estimate to go out and build that. That's the ultimate, is to retrofit all the lights in the city. The intersection lighting, and then this is just like 2 examples of different types of lights. We have the existing ones shown on Coast Highway, And then there's the LED ones, which are similar in style. It's just that their cost savings with the light emitting diodes is what you get the benefit out of. Again, looking at pedestrian scale lighting, and this is actually just on roadway or walkways, urban core areas. South Coast Highway would be a good example of that. Here, the pedestrian scale lights would be similar to what is shown on the screen. It's the acorn style. This is a LED that's down in the city of San Diego as an example. A lot of the ones in downtown San Diego have been retrofitted for this. And then finally, we went through and looked at roundabout lighting. Roundabouts are a little bit unique in nature, as each one is slightly different. So in terms of looking at the requirements, we identified what we thought would be the minimum requirements for the city for a roundabout, knowing that those would either be designed by the city or by a consultant for a developer, and put those minimum requirements as the requirement for the roundabouts, knowing that the lighting for that particular roundabout would have to be done with the design of that. So we would put the cost of that, determining the lighting for a roundabout, on the cost of whoever was installing the roundabout. And then finally, here's some examples of light fixtures. I know Abe's going to talk about locations around town where we're going to be doing this, but these are some examples that I wanted to show people. Generally speaking, if you can look up, and not that a lot of people look up at the bottom of lights, but if you did and you see the LED on it, then that's how you can typically tell it's the lower cost light. And with that, I will turn it back over to Abe.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it.
Any questions?
Not from me. Commissioners?
Oh, I'm good.
Looks good. Improvements.
All right.
Let's get it done. Thank you,
I have
John.
a couple of comments here.
Commissioner Johnson.
One of the things I notice about Encinitas is everybody is happy with the character of the community somehow. And if the lighting changes the character, you get opposition. I think there are ways, assessment districts or something, where a particular street could get some special design of lighting, and we still have to concern ourselves with the dark skies area of the city. I just hope the final report mentions those challenges.
Yes, it addresses that, and there a lot of that there was a lot wrapped up in that. Abe, do you want to discuss any of that, or?
Yeah, if I understood correctly, we did have this concern of not changing community character. One of the reasons that we wanted to have this sampling, per se, this work, we're working with our public works department and their contractors to see how we can bring in a few samples of each one of these fixtures that our consultant is recommending, to actually install them in different streets of the city and different roadways and intersections and roundabouts, to have a better idea of how they'll actually feel at night. Not to get into that situation where we come up with a fixture that seems to be meeting the standards perfect, but is not really satisfactory to our residents. So that's how we want to eliminate that risk, by testing these before approving this as standard.
Did that answer the question, or?
Commissioner Johnson, do you have any other questions? Did that answer?
No, my personal view is that lighting is good for safety, and I'm not an artist. I don't particularly care what the fixtures look like, but there are some strong opinions in town And I just want to make sure that the citizens have a chance, to weigh in on what gets put in their neighborhood. And maybe an assessment district would be a way to do it, because if they want to pay extra for it, then they can have extra features.
Yeah, I mean, when we present this to council, not the final package, but the idea of them being able to check a few corridors of the city to see how the lighting is, they can very well. John, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we have around 3 years to finalize the design before going for the con phase. Is that correct?
For the grant, before it becomes an issue, yeah, you would have, that's how much time you have. Ideally, we would have the package ready to go and advertise that as soon as possible. But if we needed to spend more time filtering through corridors, that could happen.
No, the reason I feel like there might be a chance that we might need more time. Sometimes council members, they feel like the public, they basically decide what level of public involvement is required. Obviously, lighting is a very personal matter. It's not like something that by involving 50 people or 100 people or 2,000 people, you get better result. It's really dependent on how people feel about lighting and the necessity of lighting for safety. And so I would leave that to our council. We will go there and we'll say these are the corridors that we chose to sample, and these are the lightings that are out there matching our consultant's proposal. And if council wants to make a decision and say, oh, we feel comfortable, these are good, these are nice, or say, well, we don't want to make this decision and we want to pass this to our constituents to go look at these and let us know. That's where I'm not yet 100% sure at this point how it's going to work out. That can change the time frame. If it's a decision that our council wants to make, it might be resolved in a week or two once all of them go check it out a few times in a few nights. But if they want to basically leave this to their constituents and to the residents of the city, I don't know how it's going to work out. Maybe some sort of an announcement on the city website, and then I don't know, some sort of a hotline or email address for people to send their inputs and comments. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to work out. Obviously, we have the national standards that we have to abide by. We can't really dim it to a certain level that would fall way below the national standard. Especially for intersection lighting, of course, roadway lighting is a bit flexible per se. By intersection lighting, we have to abide by those guidelines. But yeah, let's not go that far yet. Let's get to the sampling first and find a contractor who is willing to do so for us. Put them on the selected corridors, and then we'll notify our council. We'll go from there.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. I have a question. So to replace all the lights, it's going to cost $718,000.
Not all of the lights, the several corridors that were mentioned in the grant application.
Okay, so for those corridors, okay.
Correct.
And
John, do you have the list of the corridors handy?
Let's see here. We had it up. So there's the list right there. Coast Highway, El Camino Real, Garden View, Mountain Vista, Island Haven, Quail Gardens, Santa Fe, Village Parkway. So there were several corridors that were identified.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say $718,000 to change all the lights in the city. That's a deal.
No, it's not. It's 13 miles of city roadway.
Right.
It's a good chunk, Commissioner.
It is a good chunk.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
When I counted, I think it will cover around 1/3 or 1/4 of the city. And the good thing is our own public works department gradually is replacing them with LEDs. So it's not like these would be the only LEDs that we have in town. We already have a lot of them, and as they're being retrofitted and they're being replaced, developers are putting LEDs in, our public works is putting LEDs in. We're getting there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. There's sorry, this is Chair Grover. There's a street light right in front of my place on Coast Highway that I'd say every 3 or 4 months just does the blinking thing for like 4 or 5 nights before somebody calls the city. So I look forward to that turning into an LED light. Thank you, John, for the presentation, and Abe for answering some of these questions. Commissioners, anything else on this? Okay, let's move on. Item 4C, City Traffic Engineer updates on safety and mobility projects citywide.
Thank you, Chair. Abe Bandigan here. So a few items of importance. I don't know how much I updated Commission last month. So on South Coast 101, we are doing a few things. Some of them already happened, some of them in the works. So the 2 bus stops that were removed in our cycle track by the State Beach, by Solana Beach, those 2 bus stops, we're converting them to the standard cross-section of the cycle track, installing the wheel stops and bollards to create that continuity. No gap is required anymore now that the bus stops are gone. Those are in the works. We, for the first time, I'm not sure how big of a first this is, but I don't think I've seen it anywhere personally. We introduced a pavement legend for the bicycles may use full lane on Highway 101. We now have 2 of those. We had concerns about the length of this pavement legend to have 5 different lines. We used the Sharrow as replacing the word bikes, and then we added 4 lines may use full lane to basically mimic the R4-11 sign that says bicyclists may use full lane on the ground. So now we have legends. One concern that we were getting a lot from our I don't want to put a title on this group. The group that was using the number 2 lane was that people don't respect us occupying number 2 lane because they see the cycle track and they expect us to ride in it. So they don't understand and they don't see the sharrows and the signs. So we thought this would be a big advantage for drivers to see there is legend on the ground that says bicyclists may use full lane. We did only 2 at the moment, 1 in each direction, to see how our bicycling community and our drivers feel about it. Another method was to have a smaller font size, but have only 2 lines of information, may use in 1 line and full lane in another, but that would be a very, very small font that we are not used to seeing on the street. So that would look small. So I was kind of hesitant to choose between the 2, but in the end I decided to go with the 4-line approach because it still uses the standard font sizes. And I think it turned out pretty good. I mean, I drove it a few times and it looks readable, looks easy to understand. But if I get an input from the commission, or if I didn't get much from our bicycling community, much to my surprise, but I guess no news is good news. It means they like them. I didn't hear much complaints, but if I don't hear much, and if I get overall a neutral or a positive review, I'll continue to add. I believe we have 4 or 5 planned for each direction. So those are 2 of them happened. The rest will be coming. At Las Olas, the current cycle track design, this is our approach. I have another item that I will talk about, number 2. Maybe I can touch on that too. It says improving bike lane citywide. So our approach, by our I mean the traffic division that I'm handling these past 3 years, have been, when we get to the driveways and roadways in general that look like a road, but they're not actual official intersections, meaning the intersecting road does not have a street name, doesn't have an address, I don't consider it an intersection. MUTCD requires you to convert your solid bike lane to a dashed bike lane. The detail 39 converts to 39A, 50 feet to 200 feet in advance of intersection. Some engineers treat them on a judgment base. Basically, if it's a Costco driveway, they convert a bike lane at that driveway to a broken 39A and treat it as an intersection. If it's a residential roadway that has a very, very low volume, or it's a, let's say, a gated community that has a street name sign, it's an intersection, but it's a gated community with like 20 houses in it, they continue the solid bike lane. My approach was to basically have a defensible strategy. I said, whenever it's an intersection per CVC, if it's a street name sign, if there's a roadway that's intersecting another roadway, treat it with a dashed broken bike lane. If it's not, if it's a busy driveway, even it could be a El Camino Real, town center driveway with like 50, 100 businesses in it. I'm not saying this is the best approach, but at those locations, we're not breaking the bike lane at the moment. Now, Commission's opinion can be we have to change this approach, but I'm just notifying you of how I've been doing it. So at Las Olas, this was the case. There was no official intersection there, so the designer goes by continuing the cycle track all the way to the edge of the entrance to Las Olas, and the bollards and wheel stops are all there up to the tip of the right turn. Now, the concern over there is because of the parking that we have adjacent to Las Olas and the popularity of that parking area, the dirt underneath the bridge over there, there is a right hook concern. So we received a lot of complaints and concerns from our bicycling community because of the right hook potential there. And because of how large the volume of bicyclists is at that location on northbound, and northbound is actually pretty popular among our sports cyclists too, among our roadies too. I mean, southbound they tend to use the number 2, but northbound in the area they do use the cycle track quite a lot. So because of the very, very high volume, I suggested that we collect around, I'm not sure about the exact number, how it ended up being designed, but a few of the wheel stops and bollards are being removed, and the cycle track in that area will be converted to a dashed, basically a conflict area, so bicyclists can get out of the cycle track and get into the middle of the number 2 lane. So that's another improvement that's coming. With that being said, the number 2 item, the improving bike lane citywide, we, I believe you are aware that we had an unfortunate collision between a cyclist and a truck on Lucadia Boulevard, where a development project 2 or 3 years ago was built, and a roadway that was non-existent at the time was built at a location that was driveway at a time, and the bike lane stayed solid after that roadway was built. So this bicyclist was going, and for some reason did not notice the truck, or did not slow down, or somebody didn't see, either the bicyclist didn't see the truck driver, or the truck driver did not see the bicyclist. So the right hook situation happens, and unfortunately, this resident of the city passed away. When we noticed that intersection is there and the bike lane hasn't been converted to a dash yet, I tasked our staff to do a sweep citywide to find out all of these locations that for various reasons there is an intersection, a minor, most probably these are all minor intersections or private roads. I asked them to identify all of these at all of our bike lanes around the city where there is a minor intersecting road intersecting our bike lane, but the bike lane solid line has not become a dash. So a 39A is not present, and the bike lane continuously goes over the road, intersecting road. So that's what I have as item number 2. There were several locations, I believe more than, I think 20 or 30 locations in the city that this situation existed. Old bike lanes, solid, and the driveway for several different various reasons converts to an actual road. They're not big roads, they're always small roads, but there's still an intersection and the solid line is still there. So that's what we're converting citywide. These 2 are kind of similar. If there are any questions on these 2, I'll answer. Then I'll go to the 3 and 4. Anything on these 2?
Commissioner Von Neumann here, yes. Abe, I want to thank you for putting the pavement legends on South Coast Highway. I'm a big advocate for the large fonts for may use full lane. I think a good location for those as we go forward is at the beginning of the northbound stretch and definitely at the beginning of the southbound stretch, and have a number of, or at least two on each side of those, each direction. And I also would recommend that we put in more 35-mile-an-hour legends. There's large spaces, especially going northbound, where you know people are still cruising at 40, 45, or 50 even. But I think it's a great start. I think they'll be really helpful. And once they're all done, I hope that we can see some additional speed enforcement from our sheriff's department. I know Sergeant Siegfried said that enforcement is down due to COVID. Totally understandable. But hopefully, as more people get vaccinated and everything, that they can step up the enforcement. But I think the speed legends and the lettering can only be beneficial. And thank you very much for doing that. I'm a number 2 lane rider, both directions, and anything that can help is appreciated. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to echo Michael's comments. I agree with everything that he said. And I'm sort of reticent to bring up the collision and the dashed bike lanes at those intersections. I think it's good to get those all in conformity and compliance. My sort of thematic idea about how to keep these right hook scenarios from happening has more to do with slowing the car down than it does. I'm not super persuaded that if that line had been dashed, that the guy on the cycle, on the bicycle, wouldn't have been hit by the person driving the truck. I think that what we need to do, just sort of thematically, and I understand that this is a huge ask. The very curved intersections on high-speed roads that enable, to the extent that that dashed bike lane enables a motorist to make a broader and faster turn into an intersection, I believe that creates unnecessary danger. And where we can, I'd like to also applaud your practice of, where you can, keeping that line solid. I think that any time that we can require a person making a right or a left turn off of a major arterial onto a neighborhood street, anytime that we can make that person slow down to almost a stop, the chances of serious injury or fatality are decreased substantially. And so this is sort of off topic, but going forward, I would like to see, as we reformat our roadways, I'd like to see neck downs at intersections that require motorists to come to a very slow rate of speed before they can make a turn. But in the interim, I think it's a great idea to go around and try to make all of the intersections that have changed sort of in conformity with one another. But I love the paint on South Coast Highway, so put in as much of it as you want to.
All
Thank
right.
you, Marty. You have expressed my thoughts very clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with what you guys are saying. I just wanted to, I guess, comment on, and I know we talked about this at our last meeting in January, but the collision that happened on Leucadia Boulevard, given that this is the Traffic and Public Safety Commission, and we had sort of a failure of public safety, and I don't think any of us really know who was at fault. Was it the infrastructure? Was it the bicyclist? Was it the truck driver? I think a lot of people like to jump to conclusions, but as the Traffic and Public Safety Commission, Abe, is there any way that, I don't know if this is like litigious or if there's some sort of ongoing investigation, but it would be great if this commission could hear an update, a report from the sheriff's department on how this happened, better understand what was going on in the vehicle. What do they know about this so that we can maybe better advise when, we see these types of situations elsewhere in the city and we actually know what caused, the accident. So I just wanted to put that out there. It seems like something that this decision-making body should be updated on as that investigation continues, or maybe the investigation's already done. I feel like we should know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I can check with our sheriff's department. Do we have Rob here tonight, or I don't think I saw Rob.
Yeah, I don't see him.
No.
No. Yeah, I had a very short conversation. Obviously, I would have to check with our deputies to see where they're at with their investigation, and also with our risk management if there is any kind of a litigation concern or any kind of a limitation with regards to what we can present and not. But in very short, I had two conversations after this happened with our traffic sergeant and our deputy. What I can say is based on their investigations and their interviews, neither of the two sides saw each other. So they don't know how the bicyclist did not saw the truck driver. They were maybe he was listening to music. At that point they didn't know. Maybe now they know. And the truck driver, apparently what I heard was there were pedestrians, a party of 2 or 3. I don't know if I remember correctly, a mother or a child, or it wasn't just one individual. There was a party at one of the corners. When he was turning, he was looking at those pedestrians to assure they don't get into the intersection crossing. So he didn't see the bicyclists because he was focusing on the pedestrians. That's just based on a very short phone call. And obviously it might have changed from 3 months ago, 2 months ago when I talked to them. But yeah, I can sure check with our risk management team and our deputies and see if they can present more findings to the commission.
That'd be great. Thank you, Ed.
Item number 3, the North Coast Highway 101 and A intersection. So this is something that, as you recall, Chair Grover brought up to our attention that this was evaluated by the previous team, and not this location, but the side distance along 101. And this was a location that Commission asked staff to come back with further evaluation and design. We dug up all the old reports. So that is the case. The Commission asked staff 2 months before I start to evaluate side distance at this intersection for turning vehicles and for pedestrians crossing 101. So that being said, I believe I can double check. I'm not sure. I think I added it to the log if I'm not mistaken. Or I didn't.
I don't see it on the log.
No, maybe I didn't. But the location has a design on the streetscape. This is not the phase that it will happen, but there is a design with the streetscape. A Street will have a marked crossing, Continental, and the north leg will have a crossing. There would be left turn pockets in both directions, northbound left turn and then southbound left turn, with yield lines with sharp teeth in both directions. So I might be able to share the design with the commission. And so what we can do, I don't think it's worth it to study and design again, the fact that it already has an approved design. What I can do is to see in advance of this actually being implemented by Streetscape, which would be probably, I don't know how many years from now. So this is the design. I can go see how much of this we can implement in advance of a Streetscape, or if commission is okay, we can just wait for the Streetscape to happen. I'm not sure, because obviously our striping over there right now is not this. So how much of this we can implement and how we can transition into existing striping. I mean, you can see the old lines there. It's quite a difference. how the striping is out there right now and this.
Hey,
So I just
Abe,
want-
this is Chair Grover. When you say the striping is quite different, aside from the crosswalks, maybe I'm not seeing what's different about the striping besides
You
the
see the-
inclusion of.
You see the old lines there. The faded ones are the old lines. You see how it doesn't line up. So if you want to implement this,
Oh, I see.
I have to grind out a lot of the striping and make it line up. So it involves going as far as a couple 100 feet in each direction, grind out everything. I mean, south side is a bit more similar, but north side is very different.
And Abe, it looks like that's because you're creating a left turn pocket southbound into, I guess that would be the Lofty Coffee area across the street from the Lofty Coffee on the west side of the street. But if you didn't change the roadway configuration at all, couldn't you just put in these two crosswalks and some of the legends and leave the roadway markings as they are and wait for streets? I'm just trying to think of, we've done so many things over the last 10 years waiting for a streetscape, and it seems like if we could get these two crosswalks in with the appropriate signage without changing the roadway configuration at all, that would be a nice interim improvement until streetscape comes in and does the rest of this.
I sure can look into it. My only concern would be right now they'll be crossing 2 lanes. But with this design, they're actually crossing one southbound lane. But yeah, that was my question. So if this is Commissioner's direction, I'll certainly look into this. So my question was exactly this: do you want me to go look for an interim modification? Because even if we match exactly this wouldn't matter, because the roadway will be gone under rehab and will be totally rebuilt for the streetscape. So it's not like if we match this, we're actually saving money. We will not be saving money even if we match this exactly. It will be slurried or gone under rehab and totally rebuilt. So whatever we do would be temporary, even if it's matching exactly this. But if Commission wants, I can certainly look into it and see how I can introduce the northerly crosswalk with some sort of an interim measure improvements. I can do that. I can look into it.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, but I don't speak on behalf of the whole commission. So any other commissioners want to weigh in on that?
Commissioner Von Neumann here. Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Do you want me to go ahead, Michael, or you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so first off, I'm glad that Brian recollected this because I did not remember this, but I'm also glad that it's part of Streetscape. Having said that, I do agree with Brian that, Streetscape is way out there on the distant horizon. I kind of like the idea of let's opportunistically look at what can be done, and it should be done with the minimum amount of install and then tear out. So my input would be, let's take a look at what can realistically be done, understanding that the solution may not be ideal. And what we're really looking forward to here is trying to make it better, but at the same time, not trying to get ahead of Streetscape, but not waiting for Streetscape either. So opportunistic improvement is what I would recommend.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. I second all of that. I think we should move ahead and have a temporary. I think the temporary will be good for 5 years. That's my guess. And I would also recommend that it's a raised crosswalk, like the other crosswalks farther north of that. And I don't think there's a problem crossing 2 lanes of traffic, because on the southbound lanes already, pedestrians are crossing 2 lanes of traffic going from east to west. So I definitely, and the other benefit of having a raised crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons is it will slow traffic down cruising up that hill.
And down it.
And down it, yes. And there's there's more and more pedestrian traffic crossing that street now that I've noticed in the past few years. And that's just from my vantage point of being a driver and a bicycle rider in that area. So I say let's move ahead as soon as possible.
I agree with all of you guys. Lofty Coffee on both sides of the street there is wildly successful. And there are a bunch of people who I've talked to, both employees at Lofty Coffee and people who are trying to get between there and Encinitas surfboards and the other side of the street, who would benefit greatly from this. And I think it's a wonderful idea to make it raised. So I totally agree with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems to me that the best is always the enemy of the good enough. Let's do good enough for now.
Okay, so Chair, if that's okay with you, during the log, we can, I don't want to still rely on a 3-year-old item. If that's okay with you, we just get 3 commissioners to support this, you and 2 others, and during the log, we'll just add it to the log. And I'll bring it back.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me, and I do agree with Michael's kind of modification here. If we can make that raised with the rapid flashing beacons, that would be not just an improvement for pedestrian access, but also consistent with what we have further north on Coast Highway. And I do just want to note, you know, it was obviously nobody's fault that this kind of got lost into the ethers, but I'm trying to recall who made the comment. I think it was like the manager of Lofty or someone who was saying, you know, hey, we have all these people running across the street all the time. It's unsafe. I get that this is sort of a selfish request, but could you guys consider a crossing here? And since that time, we've had Chico open up. You know, there's a lot more foot traffic. And so I do want to be wary of, this is now a 2-year-old request. Not that that's especially old for requests in the city of Encinitas for traffic improvements, but if there's any way to, you know, hit the accelerator on this one a little bit, I would definitely appreciate that. Just in respect to the commenter.
Oh, absolutely. What I can promise is I'll get on it very quickly with regards to the design. With the raised crosswalk concept, however, as you know, our current policy only allows City Council to override the policy, because South 101 is not a location that is an eligible street for a speed cushion or a raised crosswalk per our policy. City Council is the only authority that can override. Now, after I bring this, I can bring this with a raised crosswalk to the commission. Commission can vote it if at that point they like it. Commissioners can vote it to go to council for approval.
Great.
But we can't approve the raised crosswalk here in Traffic Commission.
Understood. I didn't know we could approve anything here at Traffic Commission. I thought everything went to council.
Well, certain striking, signing modifications, the ones that I have the authority per Muni Code or I have per the guidelines, if commission blesses it, I'll do it. I don't go to council.
Got it.
But for raised crosswalks, I can't do it. I don't have the authority.
Okay.
One comment. Since the streetscape has come up, is that ever going to happen in my lifetime, do you think?
Above my pay grade.
It's above your pay grade.
Good
yeah.
answer.
Jokes aside,
the
first phase, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's north of Marchetta, if I'm not mistaken. I know the first phase, we do have a contractor. It's actually in the works. How long it is, I don't know, but the first phase of the streetscape is actually in the works. We have a contractor, we have the money, contractor is actually working. So it is happening. It's like the full 100% streetscape, that's a different story. But the first phase that we have the funding for, it is happening.
Yeah, so not to, I could be wrong here, but not to throw a wet blanket on that. I don't believe the first phase of streetscape is happening. I think it's the undercrossing, which is a separate project that ties into the streetscape.
Huh. I know El Portal is also, so.
Correct.
No, I have, okay, well, I can update the commission. I have a feeling that we did hire a contract. We had a pre-con meeting with the contractor for streetscape, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Oh, okay. I hope you're right and I'm wrong.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. I believe the first phase is approved and contracted for, and I think they're starting construction on that later this year.
I sure hope so, because right now people coming in from Carlsbad are coming in at about 60 miles an hour, and they slow down to 50 in the northern part of Leucadia. It is a very dangerous spot right now. And when that new hotel goes in, we're going to see some very, very serious accidents up there. I'm very concerned about that.
Okay.
All right. I have two more items that are not listed here. One is for La Costa. We had this comment last time about evaluation of a crosswalk at the hotel and how this northeast property that was denied by city council and the change of the intersection layout affected the design. So I have it on the log. I'll present it back to the commission in a month or two with regards to how we can treat it. There was the idea of diagonal crossing there to allow access from southeast corner of La Costa on 101 to the northwest corner for people who want to go toward the beach. We are working on a walkway design. The signal that you approved 2 months ago at La Costa and Vulcan, that one has yet not gone to council. We are working on a package that includes the signal and also a walkway all the way from that signal to 101, which on the south side of La Costa will continue all the way to connect it to the beach, what's actually missing right now. So when that design is finalized and council is approving it, we'll afterwards look into how we can enhance the crossing at the 101 intersection. That was one topic. We did have some emails and some comments on it. Another topic was the La Costa being converted from 4-lane to 2-lane. I think we talked about it several times. The hiring of the consultant for the circulation element update of the city is in the works. I believe it's finalized. I was on the interview panel. I'm not sure if it's officially announced, but it is almost at a kickoff meeting. Very soon we'll have a consultant on board who will start the circulation element update of the city, and that's where this topic needs to be tackled, how and what the ultimate fate of La Costa would be. There are other improvements that are planned for La Costa, the change in cross-section, if it's going to stay at 2 lanes, how we can improve safety and mobility along Sheridan intersection. We have it in the to-do list of ours to evaluate if it's warranted for a signal, if a crossing can be designed there, if it's warranted there. So there are things that are planned for La Costa, but certain things that we can do and certain things, as you know, that we can't do. Changing the speed limit, again, we're still working on that topic with our attorneys to see if we can utilize the option, consider La Costa a residential road and convert it to a 25 mile per hour prima facie. So there are a lot of things that are going on with La Costa. One of the commissioners asked a question about how come we don't have these conversations that we have about La Costa not reflected in our minutes, and they kind of fall through the cracks and we can't follow up and see how happened, what happened. So I wanted to reiterate this guidance that we got from our city clerk. What we have been directed to by city clerk is only action items and only items that have a clear to the point statement from the commission would get reflected on the meeting minutes. We cannot have conversations reflected in the minutes. We cannot have different topics that are non-agenda items being reflected in our action minutes. That's how Amanda have been doing it. We did have at some point when I started for the first 2-3 months, these longer version of minutes that apparently were unofficial. But the official minutes that we have, again, based on the direction that we have received from the city clerk, is very short and it's just focusing on the actual action. That being said, if the commission feels like we have to do it differently, we can always contact our city clerk and express your concern or your suggestion and see if it can be changed. But that's why if an item is not a log item or if the conversation does not happen during a commissioner corner, it would not be reflected in the minutes. Like what we're talking right now about this item will not be in the minute. Amanda would just mention provided updates on various items such as this, and this to the commission. And that would be the extent of it.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. And one thing I would always tell residents who want to know what was discussed on non-action items, they can always refer to the recordings of the meetings and listen to the discussion as it occurred.
Yes.
I think perhaps it would be appropriate to have the La Costa Avenue be on the agenda until decisions have been made, because it's important that the public know if we are discussing something or not.
Sure. Again, we have the crosswalk at La Costa on 101 on the log right now. I don't know if we have any other. I think the signal was there, or if it's still standing there. Um, no, the signal is not there, but we will take it to council. I have the approval from the commission. But if there is a specific topic about, like, we can have a standing item that says fate of the cross section of La Costa, and as soon as it gets somewhere, we can bring it back. You know, wherever the circulation element update can provide us a presentation. I think I have that item, regular presentations from circulation element. So yeah, if we can assign a topic and add a line there, yeah, we certainly can do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Abe, you know, I've seen some of the public correspondence on this. Obviously, we also talked about La Costa at our last meeting. This is becoming an item of interest, just everything going on around La Costa for the Planning Commission as well. And I have spoken with several planning commissioners about the possibility of forming a joint ad hoc subcommittee. That's what it's technically called, where two commissions can discuss one thing that is kind of within both of their purviews. It seems to make sense because the Planning Commission is the decision-making body that's approving all of these development projects. We are the decision-making body that's looking out for, you know, traffic flow and public safety in the city. And what's going on around La Costa and Coast Highway seems to involve both of those things equally. So maybe I'll give the group an update on that at next month's meeting, and maybe we can just have it as a standing agenda item. But it does, I think we tend to gloss over when we say La Costa, there's like 6 things that need to be discussed and dealt with on La Costa. It's not just, you know, a crosswalk at La Costa and 101 like it used to be. It's a lot of other stuff. Where's the, you know, how are pedestrians going to get across that part on the south side of La Costa when you put in that left turn lane onto Vulcan? When's a signalized intersection going onto Vulcan? All these things that are interacting with one another, and then these 5 big development projects. So it makes sense to just keep us all informed of that. And I think having that joint ad hoc subcommittee with the planning commissioners is a good way to do that.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Thank you.
This is Charlie. I approve of the idea of a ad hoc committee and getting regular updates on that. The idea of having, though, a generalized agenda item of La Costa, I do not approve of. It needs to have more specificity so that people understand specifically what is going to be discussed. I agree with Brian's observation that there are like 6, 7 things going on there. Having an agenda item that just says La Costa status, that provides no value or use. And matter of fact, it invites going down the rabbit hole. So I understand the need for focus on that La Costa corridor, but it really needs to have a specific issue associated with it rather than La Costa discussion. That is counterproductive, and I don't approve of that.
Yeah, Charlie, I agree with you completely. Abe, what I'm thinking of, I recall this was maybe 3 years ago when Streetscape wasn't moving quickly, very much like it is today. And the council asked the city manager to place just a standing agenda item that was Streetscape. And if there was nothing new to discuss, you know, they would say, staff would say, hey, there's nothing new to discuss. Let's move on to the next agenda item. But if they had some form of an update, then they would discuss that. And so that's sort of what I'm picturing, Charlie, because I totally agree with you. You can't just say La Costa. But, you know, if we have a standing agenda item and I can update the commission on, you know, the ad hoc subcommittee's discussions related to something, and it just takes 3 minutes, that's sort of what I'm picturing.
I agree with that proposal. And it really would be beneficial if it could be associated with status of the ad hoc committee. And so there's an understanding then that some issue has been addressed, and it could be, again, more focused rather than just a general briefing that is useful, I think, for the community to understand if it's something that they need to attend and something that is important to provide input on. So I agree with what you're saying. Again, I just don't want it to become a standing agenda item, because that is counterproductive to everyone's time and interest. So I think we're in agreement.
I have a suggestion, Chair. We did similar with the South 101 cycle track. Last meeting, Commission suggested it become a standing item, and I provide updates as I did. So if somebody looks at the log and they see a standing item, they can check my regular presentation items and see if there is a bullet for that standing item there. If there is a bullet there, that would mean it has a presentation, has something new has happened, or there is some kind of an update on that log item. If not, they don't need to attend the meeting, or they don't need to, to search and find this meeting and listen to it. What I can do is I can add in front of that log item the ones that are standing. I can add some sort of a box that each time would say, like, there is an update this meeting, or there is no updates this meeting, so that when people look at the log, they'll know if there is anything on this standing item that will be talked about at this meeting or not.
Sounds good.
Charlie.
Yes.
Thank you for putting us back on the tracks there. Yeah, the citizen responses, of course, they don't listen to every one of our meetings, but some people are beginning to wonder, is this a debate society or an action group? And I want to see some real results come out here, instead of, we'll have a streetscape one of these years. Are you follow?
Yes.
Okay. That being said, I have one more item that is not reflected. This is the first time we're having this. Again, this is a direction from the Commission. Last time, I believe this was the last item that Commissioner Leisherness added to our Traffic Commission before his departure. So Commission suggested I provide some sort of a summary of what's going on with the development projects in the city. I have a presentation item that Bob Grolka, our engineer, prepared for me. It has the information about four more important major projects that's going on around the city, the size of the project, the location of the project, the number of units, the different land uses, trip generation, and the status, what stage of the discretionary review, the development review process they're at. Amanda has them. I don't think they were included in the package. They are available online.
Actually, Abe, it was included. And okay. I think it's an excellent document. I don't mean to interrupt you here, but the point of my concern, if people will recall, is that there is this significant, when there is significant development activity, it does have a traffic impact. And when citizens come to us and we don't know anything about it, it makes us look like we are not well coordinated and we don't know what's going on. Now then, quickly though, to respond to it, the document that you prepared, and it is included, by the way, and I did review it, is exactly what I had in mind. It identifies not every development, but significant ones, the average daily trip impact, the status of where it currently is, and that's exactly what I wanted. So my input, since not everyone may have viewed it and you're not actually going to show the document, is people should take a look at it, and I think it satisfied that concern that I raised. So it's not that we are going to go into great detail to discuss all of these, but it's informational so that we as a commission know it. And again, we don't have oversight over the Planning Commission, but it makes us better coordinated. And Brian, perhaps something like this is related to the ad hoc committee that you're proposing, where again we get better coordination. And that was the heart of my concern. But to conclude my statements here, the document that is prepared is exactly what I wanted.
Glad to hear. Yeah, that was my question. I wanted to know like how commission wants me to treat this. Do you want me to present them? Do you want me to go over them? Do we want to discuss, or this is a good document that you would spend time reading, and if you need more if you have questions or you need more information, you can always contact even directly Bob Grolka, our engineer, and he's very capable. He can easily answer all questions. I'm glad to hear you like the document. I didn't do anything about this. This is all Bob. I didn't prepare this. I just gave him the direction I received from the commission.
Suggestion. I read that document and it tells me what I want to know. But it's not a public document. It was just sent to the commissioners. Could we attach that as an information item in the agenda report, or is that too much detail to attach to it?
I believe it is available in the package. Public can see it.
Oh, okay.
I know it is. Among other things, I've given it around to people, so it's public.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously this is something we can change at any time. If you want something added in there, I don't know, some sort of a map. If you feel like it's excessive information, unnecessary, we can remove something. Whatever you like, we can morph this into any kind of a document you like.
Thank you, Abe. And I agree with everything that Charlie said. I think, you know, something like this that's updated on a monthly basis, I don't think you need to present on it, but I think including it in the packet so that the public is aware of what's going on, so that we're aware of what's going on, I think that's a good thing. I think having a map would probably be helpful for some members of the public just to see where all this is happening. And then lastly, I would add, just because of my knowledge as a developer here in town, there are several projects that aren't listed on here. And so I don't know if, I know that Bob's aware of those. So there's, you know, the two at the corner of La Costa, well, there's several at the corner of La Costa and Coast Highway. The Jackal project, there's the one on Vulcan housing element site. There's the La Costa 48. I don't know how many, and maybe I'll put this out to the commissioners, how many projects do we want to be tracking? Because there are some that, while they've been approved, haven't been built yet, like La Costa 48. There's the hotel just next to La Costa 48. There's a lot on La Costa. Then there's Sunshine Gardens. You know, there's other projects that have applications on file that aren't on here. So I just wanted to make a note of that.
Yeah, one question that Bob asked me was this, that like, what projects do we want in there? If something is just recently submitted to the city, do we want in there? If something was like approved long time ago but wasn't built? So that's something that maybe we can get some clarification from the commission to find out like which projects. I told him projects that are either open or was recently approved, something that was approved long time ago, or it's just at very early stages of submittal. It's not necessarily now. We can hear from it 2-3 months from now. We don't need to know like if it was submitted a week ago.
Yeah, I don't know I mean, there's a CPP meeting going on tonight for a 30-unit project off of Melba, residential subdivision. Do we want that on a list like this? I don't know the answers to that, but there are other projects that aren't on this list.
This is Charlie. I agree. The granularity is something that I think that we can get better as we start working on it. And part of that will come from us reviewing it, and part of it will come from significant things that occur from the Planning Commission or other things. I would err on the side of trying to keep it manageable. I don't think we want to get this thing to try to capture everything. So it should be larger programs, and clearly we don't want to jump the gun and start tracking something before it really is on a clear path. So I guess I'm saying I agree with Brian that I don't know what the answer is, but I think that will come as we start tracking it. The most important thing is that we are starting to have a dialogue on this, which is something that we have not in the past. So I think this is good. We'll tailor it as we move forward.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, so let's move on.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. Abe, I have one question. Any word on the grant for the section of South Coast Highway between Swamis and Chesterfield?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I hear, I'll notify the commission, but no, nothing new.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's move along to oral communications, item 5. Amanda, do we have speakers?
Yes, Chair, we do. We actually had 4 speakers register, but I only see 2 in attendance. So I will start with the 2 online now. We have Elena Thompson, followed by Patricia Vasquez. I'll go ahead and unmute one by one.
Hi, everyone. Elena Thompson here.
Hi, Elena.
Hello, we can hear you, Elena.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Right on. Okay. Well, listen, thank you. And Charlie, I'm going to take your place here every Monday. I'm going to call up and talk about La Costa Avenue. But listen, thank you guys for retooling your process. It's high time. Really appreciate that. Abe, I appreciate your comments relative to the follow-up items in my correspondence on La Costa Avenue. And yeah, we really are happy that you're looking at a joint ad hoc subcommittee. I think it's important. This is a major corridor without a sidewalk. So, you know, without the sidewalk, missing a crosswalk as of late, just everything that you're aware of. So I think that you could call this, as you have your standing item, La Costa Public Safety Improvement Status Update. And then you can have the bullets that you're working on, since there's several, underneath that subject matter, okay? And the 2 items I didn't hear talked about tonight are the restriping of La Costa, because that paint's really wearing out. And then immediately, or more than immediately, as Brian said so eloquently, let's, you know, pedal to the metal. How about the 25 mile per hour, since this is in fact a residential street? Okay, so for your consideration on your standing item, really would love to hear back on that. It is a matter of life and death. So on a second subject, I did just want to make a comment. While I thanked you for your focus on La Costa, is that the recent Encinitas Bike Walk goal planning session did yield 3 full goals that have to do with public safety and your commission. And there were 3 goals that the committee decided on for this year. And one of them was to advocate that, in addition to Abe, to have the city hire a mobility expert, whether full-time or a consultant. And we feel, as part of Bike Walk, that certainly by having a mobility expert on the staff, and it could be even an existing staff member who spends half of their time on ATP matters, active transportation, that we could really finally take off. This jet has been on the runway for too darn long. We are not taking off, and some of us are on oxygen. So by hiring a mobility expert, and I learned recently that there's one in Oceanside, and his job, he's part-time, no PERS, no benefits, a former retired guy who went back to work, and he's paid his salary, which is, oh, I'm not going to disclose that here, but it's not much, is paid by Transnet funding. The city of Oceanside funds his mobility expert role. He's the bike and ped expert on that staff with Transnet funding. Now, we can do this in our city, and we need to, and Encinitas Bike Walk voted on this being one of the #1 goals. The two other goals of the top three were to fund the active transportation plan. And that's not simply fund, but it's identify key projects such as a sidewalk on the south side of La Costa Avenue is a really good example. And in addition to funding the full active transportation plan with identifiable projects, the third goal that Bike Walk Encinitas, again, a volunteer community advocacy group that's been around for 8 years in Encinitas, would like to see the installation of public safety infrastructure for walking, biking, and alternative modes of travel. So all of this really could easily be under the purview of a mobility expert who's not worried about lighting, pardon me, not worried about stoplight, traffic signal timing, not worried about slurry seals, but somebody who is really focused on our future. This is part of climate action. This is part of our transportation strategy. This is part of the city's mobility goals. So I would just ask you all, if this sounds good to you, I'd like to see you raise your hands. Just right now, let's just see a little hand raising. It's not a vote, but it's just a hand raising in support of these three goals of Encinitas Bike Walk and moving this city, getting this jet to finally take off this runway. So do we see any hands? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And I would encourage you to please add this to your log, and let's keep this alive. We're going to be talking about it again on Wednesday. I think given the full support of the community for this and the dire need for this, particularly because it is a life and death matter and we want to put bike share on our roads. I mean, let's just come full circle, connect our dots, and let's do what makes sense. This is a priority, and really want to thank you all. And Charlie, we're going to miss you as well as Peter Cole, but we're really happy the rest of you are here for us. So thank you so much for hearing me out and reading my correspondence and listening and taking action. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Patricia Vasquez.
They were very generous. They gave a lot of time.
All right, I want to thank you all for your time this evening and for your service to the community, and particularly for taking note of the issues on La Costa Avenue with traffic infrastructure gaps. I want to underscore certainly what Elena has said, but also just note that I'm a volunteer for Leucadia Cares, a grassroots group of over 80 local residents that are concerned about the unprecedented level of dense development in our area and the impacts on the corridor. I'll note, Abe, that we appreciate the document that your team compiled that notes the La Costa Avenue near-term land development projects. I would suggest that there also needs to be some additions to that, however, because I think we're also well aware of the fact that in Carlsbad, just a block away across from Ponto Beach, there is a number of developments that are being put into place, which would add 322 hotel rooms, villas, 136 townhomes, and 18,000 square feet of retail space. So it would be lovely if the city of Encinitas could coordinate with city of La Costa to anticipate and plan for that additional traffic on the La Costa Avenue corridor, which will no doubt result. And then lastly, I just wanted to make you aware that Leucadia Cares has fielded a survey to our members. We've received 141 responses so far, which will help us to prioritize the infrastructure projects. We'll plan to share that with all of you commissioners, as well as the planning commissioners and city council via email. So with that, I just want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson.
No, I'm just happy that she spoke up.
Okay. So Amanda, you mentioned that we had 4 speakers. The other 2 are not in attendance. We didn't get letters or anything.
No, they're not.
Okay. All right. Then I guess we'll move on to item 6, approval of the January 7th, 2021 meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at those? I know we talked about the meeting minutes a little bit earlier.
I'll move the item.
I'll third.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second and a third. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Just while we're on item 6, approval of minutes, did any commissioners want to comment on, the way that our minutes are currently taken? Do we want to change that? Do we want to leave it as is? I personally, when these meetings were only being recorded, I can see how, as a member of the public, it's really hard to follow what we're talking about. You don't want to listen to 3 hours of tape to try to figure out what was discussed on a certain item. I think that that's easier with these set up as Zoom meetings. So I guess I'm less concerned about having extensive detail in the meeting minutes. But if there are other commissioners that feel otherwise, I think now would be an appropriate time to discuss that.
I would like more minutes on the log at the end. I think it needs a little more detail, please.
So more discussion in the meeting minutes about what we talked about on the follow-up log?
Yes, and I think issues brought up on Commissioner's Corner should be also noted.
Okay, anybody else?
Commissioner Von Neumann here. Is it possible? Never mind. But some other day. Some other day.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I guess the thing is that we need to keep the residents informed. We're working pretty hard on this. They don't see the work we put in, perhaps, because we just voices coming out of the void. I would hope that at least this format, Zoom format, would last after the COVID thing is over. And I had my first shot last week, so I'm looking forward to COVID being over and not having to wear the mask.
2022, baby.
Okay, anybody else?
I agree with Brian and Michael. Michael's point earlier that if you really want to get down into the weeds of what was said, it's especially now that there are video recordings available, it's pretty easy to look at the corresponding agenda and get everything that was said on a specific item if you want to. I'm just disappointed that Charlie's going to be gone because I have a hard time saying things relevant enough to make it into the minutes. And he's done a great job of getting me back there a lot of times.
All right, guys. Well, so I mostly just wanted to have that brief discussion so that we can give some direction to Amanda and make sure that Amanda, it sounds like just on the follow-up log, the minutes for the follow-up log, if we can provide a little bit extra, detail from that conversation, that might help. Is that okay, Amanda?
I can double check with our city clerk, but I think I would assume that should be fine.
Okay, great.
I'll check in.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we've made it to our one action item, City of Encinitas short-term parking policy. Abe.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Amanda, can you share the presentation? Can you share the report? I want to go over the policy. So we talked about this a few, I think 2 or 3 meetings ago. At that point, Commission suggested that we go by our own internal evaluations for creating green curb, basically space short-term parking in the city. And I did look at our current Muni code and the California Vehicle Code to see what we can and cannot do. Interestingly, I'm not sure if it's COVID related or not. This April, it becomes 3 years that I'm with the city. During the first 2 years before COVID, I won't be lying if I said like we didn't have a single request about short-term parking. But after COVID, I think we've had like 4 or 5 so far, and they keep coming. So that made me feel like we need some sort of a clear policy on how we're implementing our short-term parkings in the city. Parking being in high demand, and a lot of people feel connected to their parking spaces at their curbside or at their frontage. Um, so I did look at our Muni code. Our Muni code does have green curb as short-term parking. However, for some reason, when the Muni code was written, it only authorized the city traffic engineer um, to do green curbs all around the city for a 20-minute period. I'm not sure why it was written that way, but that's something that we have to change. If we don't do that, anything above 20 minutes would have to go directly to city council. If we want to have a 30-minute parking, a 1 hour or 2 hour, 2 hour parking is pretty popular. A lot of areas have 2 hour parkings. So if we want to introduce 2 hour parking to the city, it would have to go to city council the way the Muni code is written right now. I don't have the authority to introduce 2 hour parking to the city. That is one. And the second thing is that green curb, based on the language of CVC, needs some sort of a resolution or ordinance or some sort of a authority passed from the city council to myself. So because of that, it seems like we have to go to council to clarify the process with which we establish green curb in the city and how we decide. So I wrote this item, and the next step after this would be to take this policy and the language that would revise the current Muni code 14.40.090 that defines what curb markings mean in the city and how city traffic engineer can implement these different colors. So I would have to take this to city council and revise the Muni code and start implementing after. How the policy itself is written is very simple. It's basically mimicking what we do right now, similar to the process that we unofficially undertake at the moment. Can you go to the next page, Amanda? So it starts with what we currently don't have is which streets can get this and which streets can. So I thought it's fair to assume that we don't want to establish short-term parking in non-classified and residential roads. Even if there is a business in the area, I feel it's fair to assume that if there are houses there, if there are residences there, they should be able to use the frontage of the street. If somehow a business ended up being allowed to be on a roadway, there are limited cases, but I feel we should not do short-term parking on residential roads. Second thing was, I felt like this cannot come from anybody. There should be a business. In other words, a owner of a property, a house, just because their garage is open and they can't park their cars in the garage and they don't like to see their neighbor using their frontage, they cannot come and say, I want, in front of my house be short term. So it should be a business. It should come from a business owner. If it's a stretch of road, multiple properties together, can come submit a petition, ask for a long stretch of green curb. Then we do a survey. We find out how the parking spaces are occupied in front of those properties, what the average duration of parking is, how frequently the parking turnover happens. And we do our evaluation based on the type of property and the type of the parking need. Obviously, the type of the property might need a shorter duration of parking if it's a takeout, if it's a dining restaurant, or if it's a bar, the needed short term, the period needed might be longer. And then the way we decide that this is something that the commission can advise on and provide guidance on is that if the duration that we notice is out there, is more than double the period needed by that business, then we have a problem. That's how I define the problem. And again, this is open for discussion. I said, okay, if this business needs 30-minute parking, and our survey shows the average parking occupied in front of that business is more than 1 hour, more than double the amount they need, then they can benefit from green curb and short-term parking. If the business needs a 30-minute parking in front of their property, and our survey shows on average the spaces are used for 40 minutes or 45 minutes, that means the usage is kind of in line with what they need. Now, these users might not actually be their customers, might be a different customer, but the parking is being utilized as it should, so we can't really do much about it. But if we survey a restaurant that needs 1 hour parking and we find out the average is 5 hours, in other words, it's clear that the employees or an adjacent property are using this curbside, then we have a problem. So if the average usage, if the average duration of occupancy is more than double the period that the business needs, then we'll consider short-terming it. And then the removal, in case something for different reasons, change of business, has to be removed. It can come to the City Traffic Commission and be removed. I am planning on, if approved by the Traffic Commission with any changes, taking this to City Council and rescind the old Muni Code and introduce a new one that has this information about short-term parking in the city. With that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioners?
We got a letter from one person asking if it could be during business hours only. Have you addressed that?
That's a good question. The thing is with green curbs, it's very tough to do so because you'd have to put a lot of information on the curb. A lot of cities like San Francisco, they do it with signage. So we can do it with green cape, but we can do it with signage to say like 2 hour parking only 9 to 5, something like that. It's not impossible to do. The legal challenges to that, if somebody gets a ticket, that's something that I would have to check with our attorneys and our deputies, but it's not impossible. It's doable.
Thank you.
So Abe, oh, go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I'm going to say some bad words here. Nobody likes parking meters. Parking meters are a bad word. But if you don't have a meter made and chalk, or if you don't have parking meters, you're not going to be able to enforce it very well. And if you don't enforce it, people are going to ignore it. We're a town that serves visitors. We have a lot of people who come for all day at the beach and they park wherever they can. We have a lot of people who come to our restaurants and shops. And there's no such thing as free parking is a problem. Each parking space has some value. And I don't know if we want to get involved in how parking spaces are allocated. I do notice that when parking spaces were used as dining spaces earlier on in this pandemic, the restaurants some of our restaurants were able to survive. And I just don't know what to do about this can of worms. My gut feel says if you really want to do something, you have to charge for it or enforce it. And I don't know the answer.
Yeah, Chair Grover here. I'm just going to jump in and give my 2 cents because I know that Vice Chair Benson has a lot to say on this. And I agree with Commissioner Johnson. That's what I was going to say. You know, it would be great if we could. I think this is a good policy. So I definitely support staff's recommendation to, make this our short-term parking policy. But in terms of enforcement, I mean, I feel like we have 2 sheriffs and they're just running all over town trying to do the things that everybody's trying to get them to do. The last thing they have time for is chalking people's tires and then going and following up, 2 hours later or an hour later. And we don't have meter maids that are employed by the city. So I don't really know how this is implementable. I think it's a good concept. I'm going to, in advance probably agree with a lot of things that Vice Chair Benson has to say about, we should be pricing parking all over the city. But anyway, I support this, but I really question how enforceable it is, given the difficulty that we have getting the sheriff's department to enforce some of the other, traffic issues, namely speeding on this street or that street or this street. They've got a lot to do with not a lot of resources. And this is another thing we're asking them to do, I believe.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. Yeah, I'm wondering, why, I'm not really well versed in parking issues. And in order for me to make a decision, I just don't have enough information and knowledge about the whole thing. So I'm inclined not to vote one way or the other, or even vote on this at this time. My concern is that, if you're restricting parking somewhere, it's going to push parking somewhere else. And I don't know, I just don't have enough information really to make a decision on this. And maybe the best thing is to not take any action right now until we do have more information on it and can develop an implementation plan that includes enforcement. That's my 2 cents.
This is Charlie. I want to jump in before Marty gives us the full the dialogue on free parking. But I'm going to quickly say I kind of agree with the first 3 commissioners that have spoken. I don't think that this really adds that much value unless there is an implementation plan that's associated with enforcement, etc. And the information is not there. I am not objecting to any particular thing. It's just, I think Glenn said it's a can of worms. I tend to agree with that. It's just too much vapor, and I don't really understand the need for it. And then I will conclude with this following, Mark, as an intro to Marty. I also share the notion that this concept of free parking should be available for everyone is an idea that should not be just assumed to be true. So I question this, both from an implementation perspective and from a substance perspective. And with that, I yield the floor to Commissioner Benson.
Well, apparently I've been ham-fisted enough to where everybody knows what I'm going to say. And you do. But Abe, I just do want to start there, sort of as like, before we get into a potential funding mechanism for parking enforcement and stuff, is I guess the first question is, are you anticipating that people are going to comply just basically because it's the law, or are you hoping to get the sheriff's department to extend themselves to enforce this?
Good question, Commissioner. I do remember, I haven't seen anything recently, but I do remember a couple of years ago, I did see a study that showed more than 2/3 of people do comply with these traffic regulations without enforcement, which is a relatively good number. And now I might be interrupting you, not to let you continue, but I think it would affect the rest of your conversation. There are 2 separate things. One is having a policy of implementing this, and then the second is enforcement. I feel like we can address them separately. I feel we don't need to answer them both today. So I just wanted to clarify that that's a totally legitimate concern. I am concerned about it, but residents don't ask me enforcement at the moment. The residents come to me and ask for green curb. So I have to be able to resolve their concern. I have to be able to have a policy, some sort of a authority. I can't just tell them, hey, I only have 20-minute authority at the moment. I don't have any authority. I don't have any policy. So while it's totally legit your concern, I just want to clarify again that I have residents who are asking about this, and because I don't have any authority in creating a new position in the city or creating more money for our contract with the sheriff's office, I can't just ignore my residents. I would have to respond to their concern.
Sure. And then I worry about an additional level of imbalance to an inequity if we get to a point. I understand what you're saying, and I think that especially in a town where most of the people are parking are from out of town because they're visiting visitor serving accommodations and stuff, that compliance is probably going to be somewhat inherent with or without enforcement. However, I was working on a project wholly unrelated to parking and public safety that took me to the city of San Clemente city council meetings very regularly for several years. And it was a known policy in the city that there are 2-hour parking spaces all over the city that are just completely unenforced, except for maybe one day a week. And the knowledge of that, if we do have implementation without enforcement, creates a situation where people who are employees, for example, of the local businesses know that they're not going to get ticketed. And so they can be scofflaws where the compliant people are the people who are from out of town. And so we're disadvantaging the out of towners to the advantage of the people who are in town and actually know what's going on. Maybe that's a fictive problem that wouldn't really present itself. But that's something that occurs to me. And then additionally, I don't actually have a problem. I want to echo Michael's concerns that I'm not sure that this is necessarily needed. When and if I do drive to downtown Encinitas, I almost never park on Coast Highway just because I think front entry angled parking spaces are stupid. And I know that there's tons of space for me to park on 2nd and 3rd and D and E and F and all of that. And so like Michael says, I'm not sure that I necessarily see, I understand that you're hearing things from business owners and stuff. I'm not sure that I necessarily see the need to warrant voting for this. And I don't disagree with your methodology in terms of the ratios of times that the space is occupied relative to the amount of time that the short-term parking would be needed by a business at a specific space. I think that's actually really good methodology. But my other question is, and here we go, eventually we need to get to a place where the people who are occupying public space are paying to occupy that public space. And to the extent that we want enforcement, we can find a funding mechanism for that enforcement by charging for that public space that they're parking on. So my additional question is, if we did go forward with this short-term parking situation, is that laying groundwork towards this, as Glenn says, dirty worded eventuality that I believe is sort of something that we're barreling towards, whether we want to talk about it or not? Or is this just short-term parking for the time being to appease these businesses that are reaching out to you?
We sure can. I think we had a similar case on a different topic. We do have the option of having a commission-initiated item taken to council. I can provide all the information needed. It can be launched by one commissioner, by the commission, everybody together. We can certainly do that. We can take an item to city council and say this is the commission's proposal for these corridors of the city, starting 2-hour paid parking, starting adding meters. It certainly can be done. However, again, I want to reiterate, I somehow need some sort of an authority to establish these short-term parkings in the city, even if we don't have a official implementation or enforcement plan right now. I need to find a way around it. That's why I feel this item today was needed, because when people ask us to do a 2-hour parking, I don't think the response that says, well, I can't do it for you because I can't enforce it, is a good response. The comeback would be, well, more than half the people would abide by the green curb, and that's good enough for me. So I think even without an enforcement body at the moment, it's a good idea to have a policy to be able to implement it. And the next step would, maybe it's because we never had these green curbs in town. Maybe if we get to a point where we have, I don't know, 100 spaces of green curb in downtown and other business areas on El Camino Real, I don't know. Well, Camino, we don't have parking. In areas that we have parking, if we have enough of those, then council would say, well, city, you now need a parking meter enforcement position. We hire one of these, parking enforcement carts and one individual who works short-term for the city temporarily 2 days a week and does parking enforcement for us. I mean, the need is not there because we don't have any green curbs right now.
I'm basically gonna, if I see the road to an equitable parking scenario in downtown being paved, I'm gonna vote for the item every time. But one thing that I don't understand, just from a technical perspective, is if you're talking about green curbs, would there'd be a green curb that was sometimes 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and some in another location it might be 2 hours? And if so, why would we do green curbing instead of signage?
We can do signage. Signage is usually not as clear, especially when it changes. If it's like a whole stretch of short-term parking, signage should be good. But when it's like a very small space among other spaces, curb painting works way better. Like, let's say in downtown, between D and E, we have a stretch that has 25 diagonal parking spaces, and only like 2 of those need to be converted to green. The signage would not be very clear because they can easily be missed because it's not uniform. But if the whole stretch was 2 hour, I mean, you don't necessarily need to green curb the whole stretch.
So the proposal here doesn't couple, for example, making the entire block, except for these 2 or 3 green curbs, 2 hour. In addition, it's only talking about these a la carte green curbs around town. Is that right?
Yes, one line item in there is the option of receiving a petition from the businesses. So if everybody comes in, submits a petition, then we'll consider the whole stretch. I think it's paragraph 3 or 4. So we have that option, but we unilaterally, the city does not initiate green curbs if that's what you're after. We don't limit parking. Per this policy, the city or the commission will not go out there and initiate green curbing or limiting parking, if that's the question.
Again, I'm not. I think I'm still with Michael that that I think that we need more information, or I personally do, before I see the need for this. But I'm not against it, because I do think that there's a good possibility that regulating parking could lead to proper regulation of parking, i.e. charging for it. And I think I would like to see, if we're going to, put three green curbs or 2 green curbs in a stretch of 25 parking spaces, I would like to see time limitations put on the other parking spaces in that stretch too, personally. But
yeah, that needs a totally different study. The way this policy is drafted, it's not that. What you're after, I understand. Yeah, what you're after is some sort of it's called a TSM or TDM. Some call it transportation demand management or transportation supply management. It's like changing a ticket of a bus. When you lower the cost, you'll have more demand using that mode of transportation. When you start parking pricing, people tend to use other modes of transportation. They ride their bikes, they use transit. So there are different methods. This specific policy that's in front of Commissioner right now is not that. We're not going to manage our transportation demand by changing the parameters, it being, metering parking and starting paid parking. This is to serve the businesses who have parking at their frontage, but it's not being properly utilized. So I'm not rejecting the idea. That's a very good idea, which is being implemented almost in every country other than US, which is managing. Well, we have it in some cities. We have it in New York. We have it in DC. We have it in some areas of LA even, to prevent cars from entering certain roads of the city by introducing, extensive pricing even. But this policy is not it. This policy is for us to be able to respond to public when they're asking for a few spaces here and there.
You guys know where I stand, and I'm not necessarily opposed to this. Can you give us more information about who and how many people, tenants or residents of this commercial area have reached out to you?
I think we've had 4 or 5 these past few months, 6, 7 months, 4 or 5 locations. Some asking for 2. One was a post office, one was a restaurant, one was a coffee place. Different businesses, different needs, and they feel like they don't have enough turnover at their frontage where people just park there and leave their cars for 7, 8, 9 hours.
I'm going to support this idea for several reasons. First, as I hear what you're saying, Abe, the business owners have requested this and you haven't been able to respond because there's no policy. And second, because I think this is a real big step toward moving so that parking is not a free public space anymore. This means you've got to move your car fairly quickly. You're not going to just sit there for the day using up public land to park. So I will support this as written.
Okay, other commissioners? Do we have anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I think I'm going to second it.
All right, there we go. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Johnson opposed. Any abstentions?
Commissioner Von Neumann abstain.
Commissioner Leisherness abstain.
Okay, so we have 2 abstentions, 1 commissioner opposed, and we had 3 supporting. So the motion passes. Whew, barely. Okay, so Abe, I think I'm guessing that all of us are kind of those of us that supported it are kind of wishy-washy about the actual implementation of something like this. And I think that those that didn't support it fall into the same category. So,
can I make a comment?
Yep, go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, we also have some blue parking spaces which are handicapped, and people tend to observe that, though not always. My wife has a handicap placard, and when we park, about half of the time we find a handicap spot. But I'm concerned that next we'll want purple markings. Because of the special service, the special need of some business or another. If we do it with green for the whole district, that would be reasonable. But singling it out little business at a time is just going to create confusion.
Point of order, the motion has been made and has passed, and we really should move on to the next item.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Schultz. I was waiting for Charlie to tell me that.
Somebody has to take over that role.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So let's move on to item 8, the follow-up log.
Yes, Chair. Follow-up log, not much change. A few items added, mostly standing items. The first one, the Vulcan Avenue reclass. As I mentioned, I am in conversation. I'll update the commission as soon as I hear back from our attorney's office. The speed surveys are on hold, not just in our city, apparently everywhere. I talked to my colleagues in other cities. Almost everywhere is stopping their surveys these days. Item 27 and 30, both are related to speed limits citywide. I'll merge them into one item as soon as we have the final answer about how we want to treat our residential and business districts and prima facie a speed limit. Then we'll go and then treat those higher speed roads and also implement new pavement legends for a speed limit citywide. Those can all together be one single item. That item has to go to council after commission. Item 31, new crosswalk evaluations on San Alejo. We're looking at 2 locations. We'll evaluate those 2. They're kind of on hold because of this whole, volume change situation. But hopefully we'll bring them in to commission next month. The item 33 and 34, the 2 are standing items. One is the circulation element update that as soon as the project starts, I'll ask the project manager to help us with maybe some sort of a quarterly or every 6-month update on what's going on with the commission, what's going on with the update. Maybe even sooner at every milestone that they have, they can come to the commission and present. Another standing item, updates on South 101 cycle track. Whatever changes or new things happens there, I'll present to commission. I'll introduce the changes. Item 35, the citywide e-bike policy. I had a conversation with our Parks and Recreation Department. They do have some sort of policy, and apparently CVC has introduced some new regulations. But I'll create an item for the commission, merging all these different rules and regulations that the county has. The city apparently our risk management formed some sort of a policy. I'll merge them all together and bring to commission so that commission can weigh in and let us know if something is missing or something has to be added. And the last one is the crosswalk evaluation that we talked about. The possibility of a diagonal crossing there at 101 on La Costa. That's also on our to-do list. Not much going on with the log. If there are any questions there, I'll be happy to answer.
A quick question about the e-bikes. They are a very big concern. People are riding the wrong way. They're going too fast. They're not wearing helmets. A lot of things are going on that are very dangerous. And I am concerned about waiting even till May before we have somebody dead from one of those things.
We do have several different guidelines and policy. They're not just merged into one single city. I think again our risk has one policy. So people who contact us who want to start these like e-bike businesses, they have these regulations that they can receive from the city. Our Park and Rec has certain rules and regulations and policies for riding these in our parks. The California Vehicle Code has its own so there are a bunch of, it's not like there are no rules, and the people who use these pretty frequently, tend to contact us and get these policies and rules. But I can't bring what we have to the commission sooner, but to put something together, I would certainly need a lot of input and green light from our different departments. I need our attorneys weigh in, I need our risk management, I need our parks department. So it's not something that I can initiate by myself and just bring to commission. This is something that is more like an interdepartmental thing. And that's why I need more time for it.
And I appreciate that. It's just very vivid in my head because yesterday on the 101 in Carlsbad, a bunch of e-bikes got, at least one e-bike, perhaps there were more, got involved with a car, and there was a lot of blood on the road. And as the cop was finishing his cleanup of said, a group of about 6 young kids came by on their e-bikes, most of them not wearing helmets. They were kind of surprised that the cops stopped them and ticketed them for that. But, I don't want to see our kids dead on the road, and nor do you. So take your time, do it right, but it's becoming an urgent problem.
Commissioner Von Neumann here. On item number 22, the speed survey for Piraeus, I'm wondering if we should just take that off of the log. I mean, is that really, that stretch of road, is that really a high priority to spend time and energy on trying to figure out speed?
The reason is, as you know, when we change the striping cross-section of a roadway, when we introduce a buffer or a new bike lane or some sort of a change in the striping, narrow down the lanes, we always go back and then do a new speed survey to see if we can lower the street speed limit. That has been the case with the Piraeus. We introduced a new nice bike lane to the roadway and narrowed down the lanes. So we were anticipating to be able to lower the speed limit there. But then COVID hit and we didn't get to do the survey, and we don't want to do a survey and end up having a, bad result that can defeat our purpose. So yeah, I can take it off and do it whenever the time is proper.
I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about that.
Michael, this is Charlie. The process for removing something from the log is the same as adding. You make a recommendation and get the support of 2 other people.
I recommend that we take item 22 off of the log for the time being. Does anybody else support that? I need 2.
I'm fine with that.
Anybody else?
Do it. I'll support that.
All right.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks, Charlie.
Welcome.
Anybody else?
Charlie.
Any other comments? Okay, why don't we move on to item 9, Commissioner Corner. Anybody?
Commissioner Von Neumann here. I have a comment. I appreciate, as I mentioned earlier, I really appreciate the improvements of the pavement legends on South Coast Highway. We do definitely need to figure out other ways of slowing the traffic down. And I'm talking down between Chesterfield and Solana Beach. And I'm wondering, can we install some additional crosswalks? Perhaps at the intersection with Las Olas with a rapid flashing beacon crosswalk. Perhaps at the end of Harbaugh Trails in Solana Beach to cross over essentially at the border of Solana Beach and Encinitas and Solana Beach, or Cardiff and Solana Beach. We just need to figure out how to get traffic slow, because people are not driving slow on that section of road. But I appreciate all the efforts. I just think we need to do a little more there. And we've heard a lot about La Costa Avenue. And again, are there any places on La Costa Avenue that could benefit from a crosswalk? For instance, at Sheridan, or any place else, like a raised crosswalk with rapid flashing beacons that we've used in other places with the intent of making it safer, slowing down traffic, etc. And I just think we should really try to be a little more creative, aggressive, and quickly install like more crosswalks and things like that on those 2 sections of road for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Abe, do you have any thoughts on that?
For the crosswalk on 101, Las Olas already has a signal and a crosswalk there. But the one closer to Solana Beach, I do know that Councilmember Kranz, and I do think also Councilmember Henze at some point brought it up. We do have the idea of potentially signalizing the state beach access and forming a crosswalk there. The thing is, we don't have a walkway / sidewalk on the other side. So that crosswalk would technically be just a bike crossing for bikers, not to have to go all the way to Solana Beach and make a U-turn at the first signalized intersection, which is, I think, 3 blocks or 4 blocks away. Other than that, that won't really serve as a crosswalk. It can stop, obviously it would stop vehicles on 101 to serve people who are coming out of the parking lot. We can rest it on green so that when nobody's present in the parking lot access, it will never turn red. unless a biker pushes a button or a car is present. So there are ways to do that that can serve us as that crossing / traffic calming method that we're after. Just a non-signalized crosswalk with an RFB or something. I have a relatively hard time justifying it right now because of the slope that we have there. Visibility is limited, especially at night. If it's in Solana Beach, it's a flat surface, it's better. Solana Beach, I believe, has a design for a signal at Ocean Cove, which is the first intersection right after the city. I'm not sure if I'm making the street, is it Court or Cove? I think it's Ocean Court. The first street right after the border. So if there was a crosswalk there or where that Welcome to Encinitas sign is, where it's more of a flat space, it's better. But to have a crossing at the beach entrance without any kind of a active control, I'd be a little bit hesitant, but we haven't studied that. And again, I do know council has brought it up. If we feel like funding is available to do some sort of a active action there, like active traffic control, I'll certainly like the idea of thinking about a signal there. That can help us a lot. We can tweak the timing to create a traffic calming effect there, make it rest on green instead of resting on red, so that, making it rest on red instead of resting on green, to have that calming effect so that everybody who enters the city would have to come to a complete stop, even if there's nobody present at the beach access. So traffic engineers do that when they want to benefit from a signal that's present. So we have these options, but to, again, form a crossing that leads to nowhere, that there's nothing on the other side, it's just a cycle track. So we can call it a bike crossing, do a raised crossing and benefit from the raised effect, and just serve bicyclists who want to make a U, residents of the city who use the cycle track on the southbound side, get there, and then go to the other side and then continue northbound. That's doable.
Right. Yeah.
Bike-only crossing.
Yeah, we do have crosswalks like at Kai's restaurant, and you said at Las Olas, but they aren't raised crosswalks like up in Leucadia on Coast Highway.
Yeah, the raised crosswalk idea at the current locations was brought up at the night when this whole cycle track idea was being discussed. But council at that point, I think, left it to a future discussion.
The future is now.
I feel it's a good idea. I really like the idea because those two crossings, they work very well. When they're activated, they stop vehicles, which is obviously perfect. Speed goes to 0. When they're not activated, if they're converted to raised, they can give us that traffic calming effect that we're after. So I like the idea. The only thing is to override the policy, it needs council. So I either need a commission initiated item or a council initiated item. It's not in my authority to go propose a raised crossing at a location that's not eligible for our policy. But as soon as commission says go or council says go, I'll go design it.
So commissioners, just to jump in here, I recall those conversations among the city council, and I do recall Councilmember Kranz and Councilmember Hinsey bringing up the raised crosswalks, and for whatever reason that just got lost into the ethers. I thought it was a great idea based on the experience in Leucadia where I live. They do have the effect of substantial traffic calming. So I would recommend that whether it's Commissioner Von Neumann or any of you want to make this a commissioner initiated agenda item and fill out that form, as Abe just said, that kind of starts the path that's needed to get this to council. So I would fully support that if somebody wants to take the initiative.
What Commissioner Von Neumann here, what do you mean fill out a form?
So in order to, and Abe, you can elaborate on this, but in order to create a commissioner initiated agenda item, which would be an action item at next month's meeting, you have to fill out, it's just a 1-page little sheet. Abe, I believe that's still the policy, right? Or can we just ask for it?
I don't know if we have the form, but you're correct. Technically, instead of I bring in an item, it would be a commissioner initiated item. and it would have the same methodology. It would need support from the commission, but when it's approved, it's now a commission initiated item that goes to city council for further review and approval. Council has the same thing. Staff don't need to initiate an item. A council member can initiate an item, bring it to council, and then council will review and vote on.
Well, I'd love to make it a commissioner initiated item.
And I'll second that, and doing it in those 3 locations at the entrance to Solana Beach and at Sheridan Road and at Vulcan Road on La Costa Avenue.
I'll third that. Okay, so then I think what Peter Cole used to do is he would just send an email to Abe and say, here's the commissioner initiated item that I want to discuss. Right, Abe? So Commissioner Von Neumann, maybe just send an email to Abe and give it a title and give it a description. And then we should be able to hear it at our next meeting or the following. Yeah, and then you can vote on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Sorry for making that a little clunky, guys, but I did want to make sure that we sent that through the proper channels so that it doesn't just get lost again. I think it's a good idea. Anybody? I have a quick soapbox item that I would just like to raise while we're in Commissioner Corner here. So, and this is kind of tagging off of what Commissioner Scholes brought up related to e-bikes. And I want to preface what I'm about to say by stating that the fact that I see teenagers out riding bikes and skateboarding and hanging out outside with each other, I think shows some element of hope for the future that I thought we were trending towards, where everybody's just in their house, on their phone or on their computer in some virtual world. So I really love that all these kids are out riding bikes. It's really cool to see, and skateboarding and just outside, hanging out with each other, interacting with real people. However, it's, as Commissioner Scholes said, it's quite a bit uncontrolled. Not just the e-bikes, but also, based on my direct experience with an office across the street from Pacific View Elementary, it's getting out of hand. And Abe, I've brought this up. I've called the sheriff's department probably 8 times in the last month. There's groups of 40 kids at Pacific View jumping over the chain link fence. They're up on the roof. It's insane. And I've told the sheriff's department, I'm not trying to get any of these kids like in jail or anything. They're going to hurt themselves. They're trying to jump off of the roof. And, I was one of these skater kids when I was younger, and we would go and find spots, but I never did this kind of stuff. This is crazy. So the sheriff's department is not, I had a really good conversation with Deputy Burgess. And I don't know if he did any of the drive-bys, but when I've seen other deputies go and drive by, they just flash their lights and then they keep going. And they're seeing kids up on the roof of a city-owned property that's fenced. It's insane. This is the Traffic and Public Safety Commission. Something more needs to be done. These kids are also laying down in the middle of the street at the corner of 3rd and E Street. Laying down in the middle of the street to stop traffic because it's funny. I get how that might be funny, but it's also extremely dangerous. So I just want to put this out there. Maybe this is just me, but the stuff that I see on a daily basis at Pacific View Elementary is insane that we allow this to happen on a city-owned property. And someone, I hear everybody say this about everything. Someone's going to get hurt, one of these days, but I'm watching kids like break their wrists and it's crazy. They are getting hurt. They're just not getting hurt enough that, they're unconscious on the ground. But something needs to be done. It's a city-owned property. It's not even private property. So this feels like an appropriate forum to bring it up.
Are they masked?
No, of course not. So again, it's good that these kids are getting outside, but I'm talking about like armies of teenagers every day.
Brian, this is Charlie. first off, I'm glad that you're bringing up a public safety issue. We rarely move into this vector in our meetings. And I think that during the pandemic, we've become more aware about responsible behavior. And I think that part of it can even be as simple as having council make a statement about the importance of public safety and then specifically identifying what it is that they would like to see changed. So, you know, clearly with the pandemic, they did some big things to try and help businesses deal with that. And that was great. But I think this issue of public safety is problematic in the sense that we do not have dedicated enforcement to patrol the streets and enforce things. But I do think that council can play a role in terms of communicating that we're concerned about irresponsible behavior that is starting to show up. And part of it can be, I think, related to this whole COVID thing. It's not COVID, obviously. This kind of behavior is, it's just what? It is part of becoming a more densely populated area. But nonetheless, my point is the enforcement would be the big thing. But I think just saying public safety is important, and we encourage citizens to play an active role in making sure that their kids do not engage in dangerous behavior. We're not going to be able to, you know, hire someone to patrol city-owned property and keep them out. But we can say, this is becoming a problem. And we can also relate it to Commissioner Schultz's concern about e-bikes, in that, you know, technology is changing, the city is changing, public safety is important. And having council make a statement as to that importance is a starting point. But I would support a more tangible recommendation, but I don't know what it would be.
Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, so I don't have a solution for this, and I think I failed to connect the dots with the skateboarding and the e-bikes. All these kids, you know, strap their skateboard onto the back of their e-bike and they're zipping all over town. Once the cops get called on them at one place, they go to the next place, and then the cops get called on them there and they zip back to the next place. And I watch this because I work downtown on a daily basis. But I agree, Charlie. I don't know what the solution is. I just it's great that kids are getting outside. It's not great, some of the things that they're doing, especially on city property. And I do know several business owners who have serious issues with like underground parking spaces or covered parking spaces, and kids just, you know, like to go hang out there. And I mean, we're talking about big groups of kids. So anyway, I just figured I'd raise that. Maybe someone from city council is listening and wants to.
In normal times, they'd be in school. They wouldn't be out all day skateboarding and raising hell. And I was a kid once myself.
I think that's a good point. And I'm thinking of a time when a kid came. I taught at Pacific View for many years, and a kid came into my class running late, and she made it on time, and she said, "Oh, good, I made it on time. I'm not going to get spanked when I get home. I just ran through the guardrails because the train was coming. I didn't wait for it." And this kind of got this particular teacher very upset. So I called the train people, NCTD, and they immediately sent out an engineer, and we had an all-school assembly on the fact that you don't cross the tracks if the poles are down, because the train will take another mile before it can stop. And I think once schools are back in session, we probably need to ask somebody to go out, perhaps the police, perhaps a really good skateboarder, to talk about what's safe and what's not safe.
Yeah, I agree.
There are some real good skateboarders in this town who probably are quite articulate.
Very true. I go out there and I yell at them and I say, go surf. The surf is good. You must surf also. Anyway, I just wanted to raise it. We don't need to discuss it in any more detail, but I'll keep you all updated on my weekly observations. Anybody else, commissioners?
No,
Commissioner
I
Corner.
move we adjourn.
Okay. Charlie, what do you think? Should we keep chatting or are you about done here?
I will make my last second. I second that motion.
All right. We've got a motion to adjourn and a second from Commissioner Leisherness. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Charlie, for all your service.
Charlie.
We appreciate
We're
it.
going to miss you, Charlie. And